She laughed in the rain, and her skin melted off. The villagers swore it was a curse, but Amma had no fear of old warnings. That morning, the clouds rolled in heavy like warriors drumming their arrival, and while others rushed to shelter, Amma stood bare beneath the dark sky, arms out, joy bubbling out of her chest like a secret too good to keep. They watched from the thatched huts, whispering the old words, "Never laugh when the sky cries, or it will remember you." But Amma was the girl who danced barefoot on thorns and giggled at thunder. When the rain began, it hit the ground with a hiss, warm and sudden. She twirled, her laughter rising over the wind. But then her feet slowed. Her arms fell still. Her skin, starting from her shoulders, began to glisten oddly, stretch, and then peel like the bark of a dying tree. She didn't scream. Her laughter faded into a strange hush. Villagers ran to her, but the girl who mocked the storm was now kneeling, her skin pooling like cloth around her. Her eyes were open, dazed, not in pain, but in awe. Beneath the skin, glowing ancestral symbols marked her body, symbols no one alive remembered. And then came the rain again, softer, colder, as if it was mourning what it had just taken. The village of Odu had seen omens before, but nothing like the peeling girl beneath the storm. They carried her to the healer's hut on a raffia mat. As her exposed skin pulsed faintly with glowing lines, like lightning had carved truth into her, old Mama Kaido placed her hand on Amma's chest and wept silently. The markings were real, not imagined. Symbols of the first daughters, the rain callers, the ones erased from the oral stories when drought made them dangerous to remember. That night, no one slept. The elders gathered in the shrine of broken calabashes, pouring libation and begging the gods to send dreams. But dreams did not come. Only the river rose quietly past its banks, as if the earth itself leaned in to listen. Amma remained in the hut, unmoving, her breath shallow. A goat was sacrificed, its blood soaking into the earth, but the soil spat it back in clumps. They tried every ritual, smoke, song, drumming, but Amma's skin refused to return. Her body glowed like wet coal, smooth and too bright for this world. And then, just before dawn, she spoke a single word in a tongue. Even the griots didn't. No. The wind stilled. The baobab trees outside bent slightly and Mama Kaido gasped. She's not cursed. She's been awakened. But from what? No one dared say. The next morning, the village awoke to a scent they hadn't smelled in years. Burned rain. Not burned earth, not wet leaves, burned rain. As though the clouds had carried fire inside their bellies and now wanted to exhale it through Amma's skin. Children were pulled away from the healer's hut, where the air shimmered with invisible heat. Meanwhile, the elders debated what to do with a girl who bled no blood and whose body spoke stories written in flesh. Amma's father, a mason named Kobe, refused to enter the hut. "If she's no longer mine," he muttered, "then let the spirits raise her." But her mother, Nene, sang a lullaby from Amma's baby years at the doorway, hoping sound might reach where touch could not. Inside, Amma began to float, barely an inch from the mat, but her body quivered like a pot boiling from within. The Sao, healer smeared red soil beneath her, forming ancient signs, but the soil dried instantly. That afternoon, a hawk circled the sky 3 times and dropped a single white feather at the shrine gate. No one had seen such a bird since the famine years. The oracle was summoned from across the river. He arrived barefoot, eyes painted with ash, and said only one thing after gazing at Amma. "You buried the rain years ago. She came back wearing your daughter's skin." The oracle's words spread like fire in dry yam leaves. "She came back, wearing your daughter's skin," echoed through Odu like a curse and a blessing combined. The villagers divided. Some believed Amma was chosen to remind them of broken covenants. Others whispered she had become a vessel of wrath. Either way, no one dared touch her. For 3 days, Amma's glowing skin refused to dim. The mat beneath her had charred at the edges, and the hut now pulsed with soft humming at night, like distant drumming underwater. Children dared each other to peek inside but ran when shadows danced without source. On the 4th night, rain returned, but it never touched the ground. It floated above the village like a hovering veil. And then, it happened. Amma stood. Her skin shimmered anew, and her eyes, once warm and brown, had turned silver. She walked to the shrine gate barefoot, and the white feather from the hawk flew back into the air on its own. At that moment, old Mama Kaito fell to her knees and cried out, "The girl is gone. What stands before us is the memory of what we tried to forget." The lightning cracked, not in the sky but from beneath the earth, and for the first time in a century, the sacred well overflowed, rising, not falling. Amma did not blink as the sacred well spilled over, its water warm and steady, running uphill toward her feet. The villagers watched in hushed disbelief. The well had been dry since the season the elders betrayed the rain maidens, burning the grove where girls were once chosen to carry the sky's voice. Amma, standing in her new skin, belonged to that forgotten order, yet she had never been trained, never initiated, never even heard of the rain maidens. But her blood remembered. Her bones answered. As the water touched her, it sizzled slightly, not burning her, but unlocking her spine with a quake so sudden her knees buckled. She landed on all fours, not out of pain, but submission to something rising from below. The feather that had danced through the sky now hovered over her like a crown, and when she stood again, the villagers gasped, not because she glowed, but because she now bore across her back the same mark etched into the shrine stone, 3 coiled circles with a teardrop at the center. The mark had not been seen in generations. A child whispered, "The sky has taken her," but Mama Kaito corrected, "No, she has taken the sky." That night, none of the village fires would stay lit. Every flame snuffed out in seconds, as if the air refused to hold. Heat that wasn't Amma's. The darkness was thick but not empty. It pulsed. And at its center was the girl whose skin no longer belonged to time. Amma didn't sleep. She stood at the old tree stump outside her home, staring at the heavens with eyes that did not blink. Rain hovered again, just above the ground, forming spirals that circled her ankles. Nene approached quietly with a scarf and attempted to cover her, but as she drew near she heard singing, not from Amma's lips, but from the space around her. It was a lullaby no mother remembered teaching, yet Nene's heart knew it. She wept, softly, placing the scarf on the ground instead. The elders called an emergency night council in the silent shrine. Their torches failed again, and in the dim, one old man said what none dared speak aloud. "We stole the Rain Maiden's power. We buried the songs. Now she returns, not to heal, but to show us what silence costs." The next morning, fog blanketed Odu. Not mist, but fog. Thick like cotton pulled across the village's memory. People wandered with pale eyes, forgetting where their homes were, forgetting even the names of their children. Only Amma walked with clarity, her feet guiding her toward the forbidden grove at the village's edge. Now overgrown, buried in myths, erased from maps. But the path opened for her, vines parting like arms remembering their child. She entered without hesitation. Inside, the grove shimmered blue-green, the leaves humming in harmony with her pulse. The ancient rainstones, huge flat slabs once used to call storms, sat dormant, half buried in moss. Amma knelt on one and placed her palm flat. Instantly, the stone glowed. Then the others lit up, one by one, as if voices long silenced had found tongues again. The forest breathed, the vines writhed like snakes shedding skin, and for a heartbeat, every animal in the grove bowed. At the center, a dead tree burst into blossom. Petals shaped like tears fell around her, and the sky wept again, not from above, but from below. That evening, Amma returned, but no one saw her approach. The fog receded wherever she stepped. The moment she crossed into the village square, the drums beat on their own, old rhythms not played since the last rain maidens were betrayed. People came out slowly, their eyes clearing, names returning. Babies stopped crying. Goats lay quietly. And then she raised her hand. The rain above the rooftops finally fell, but not like ordinary rain. It landed without sound. It touched skin and revealed truth. A young man screamed, his face darkened with a lie he'd hidden. An elder fainted as his back revealed a brand thought healed. Everyone's secrets bloomed on their skin, marks, names, betrayals, inked in water. Only those who had lived without shame remained unchanged. The village became a living scroll, but Amma remained still. She didn't gloat. She simply walked to the well and dipped her hand in. The water glowed. Mama Kaido stepped forward and whispered, "We are no longer a village. We are a memory, and she is the keeper." The next sunrise came without color, no gold, no blue, only white light, soft and blinding. It was as if the sun itself was unsure whether to bless or warn. Amma stood beside the well, her hand still glowing faintly where it had touched the water. Around her, villagers stayed still, afraid that movement might provoke another revelation. The marks on their skin from the rain's unveiling had not disappeared. They lingered like truth that refused to fade. People walked quietly, no longer, calling each other by name but by what had been revealed. The thief, the betrayer, the forgotten. Only the children approached Amma freely. They touched her new skin, fascinated by the warmth and the soft hum it carried. She spoke to them not in words, but through presence, through the way the rain moved with her, how the clouds shifted when She blinked. The elders met again, but this time they came barefoot, with ash smeared on their foreheads, no longer counselors but confessors. Amma did not ask for apologies. She offered no punishment. She only watched. That was enough. Her silence became the law, and through it, Odu began to change, not out of fear, but out of realization that the girl whose laughter once invited scorn had become the one holding their forgotten covenant in her skin. The rain no longer fell randomly. It came when Amma stepped out, and not all could stand under it. Some people's skin would sting, others would feel weightless, and a few, mostly children, would dance as if the drops carried joy itself. The village tried to live normally again, but nothing was normal now. Fields bloomed faster, goats birthed twins, the trees whispered at night, and Amma, though still among them, seemed to dwell half in the world, half in something older. One afternoon, a stranger arrived, a merchant from beyond the river, unaware of what Odu had become. He mocked the villagers, laughed at the marks on their skin, and dared Amma to speak. She looked at him once. It rained. Just over him. His body steamed, and his voice was gone before his words could finish. The villagers said nothing. Amma turned away. Later they found the merchant at the grove's edge, weeping silently beside a tree that had bloomed red flowers only once before, when the first rain maiden died. He left without trade. From then on, no outsider questioned the girl of rain. Word spread far. Odu was no longer a place you could visit. It was a memory made flesh. And its keeper was a girl whose laughter once cracked the sky. The elders, realizing their power had crumbled, asked for a final audience with Amma. They came not with robes, but with bare feet and offerings, salt, yam, carved birds. Amma accepted nothing. She led them to the grove where she had awakened the stones. There she pointed to the soil. The elders knelt. Their hands dug with trembling fingers until they uncovered what they thought was myth, a circle of bones wrapped in old silk, rain symbols carved into each skull. The elders wept. These were the bones of the last rain maidens, buried in silence when their songs were outlawed. Amma did not speak. She laid her palm over the bones, and for the first time in Odu's history, the wind sang, not blew, not howled, sang. Every leaf in the grove swayed to the same rhythm. The elders, stripped of titles and pride, wept openly, their backs marked by glowing lines, branding them with their forgotten deeds. When they returned to the village, they did not speak as leaders. They spoke as those who had been forgiven, but not by man, by memory. And memory had chosen Amma as its tongue. Amma began to change again. Her eyes, once silver, deepened to black, bottomless, like wells of knowing. Her hair lengthened overnight, and her footsteps never left prints. The villagers no longer called her child or girl. They referred to her as Rainkeeper. Her hut was rebuilt at the grove's edge, facing the sunrise, open to the wind. People came in silence to leave offerings, not of gold, but of confessions. Secrets they couldn't carry anymore. When Amma heard them, the rain would fall, or not, depending on the weight of what was said. And when a child was born, the mother would bring the baby to Amma, who would hold it once and mark the forehead with clean water. If the water glowed, the child was blessed. If not, no one mourned, only waited, for not every child needed rain to be chosen. One evening, the sky opened with a storm unseen in generations. Amma walked into it alone. Thunder wrapped around her like a cloak, and lightning circled her feet. When it ended, she was dry, and the old cracked statue of the rain goddess, buried in dust, stood new and whole in the square. People no longer doubted. They simply knelt when Amma passed, not because she was a god, but because she remembered when gods still walked. 3 moons after the great storm, Odu's sky changed color. Not black, not blue, but a strange golden gray that flickered at dawn like old parchment catching fire. Birds began migrating out of season, and the animals stayed close to the village, silent, alert. The villagers understood. The rain was no longer just a visitor. It had become something that watched. Amma, now called Rainkeeper, walked each morning to the well and whispered into it. No one heard what she said, but each time she returned, a new flower species bloomed along the path, petals shaped like spirals, veins glowing faintly. The people had learned to read these like omens. One day, all the flowers bloomed black. That evening, thunder cracked even though no clouds had gathered. The oracle returned, uninvited, carrying a scroll sealed with bark sap. He handed it to Amma and spoke a single word. Return. She took the scroll, placed it on her chest, and it burned without flame. That night, she did not return to her hut. She walked into the forest. The grove lit up in silence. No one followed. But from that moment, the village water tasted sweeter, and dreams returned to the sleepers. Amma had gone into the roots of memory, and the land remembered how to heal. In her absence, silence spread not as fear, but as reverence. Children played more gently, elders spoke less, and even the wind moved slowly through the village trees. But as days passed, questions crept in like mist. Would she return? Was she now part of the forest? The mothers noticed their babies stopped, crying at night, and their skin bore faint spirals like Amma's. The marks glowed briefly when rain touched them. Farmers began planting without season. Somehow the soil knew. Rain came only when needed, never more, never less. And then, without warning, Amma returned, not through the path, but through the well. One morning, her voice echoed up before her, body emerged. She rose as if the water had carried her like a cradle. Her skin had changed again, still radiant, but now etched with thin, luminous veins that pulsed like rivers on a map. She opened her eyes, and everyone who saw her felt 2 things: peace and the weight of their own truth. She smiled once. The smile was not joy, but acknowledgement. Her presence no longer surprised anyone. It felt like seeing the moon after forgetting night existed. Odu, once broken by silence and shame, had been made whole by the laughter of one girl who dared to dance in forbidden rain. A council of rainkeepers from distant regions arrived days later, drawn by the stories carried by wind and dreams. They arrived wearing robes of stone dust and feathers, each bearing scars shaped like rivers. None of them spoke until Amma allowed it. When she nodded, they removed their sandals and knelt, not as equals but as witnesses. They said nothing about her power. They only asked what she had seen in the roots. Amma said, "The truth." They bowed deeper. They understood. One, among them the oldest, placed a silver gourd before her. Inside was the seed of a tree that only grew where ancestors had wept. Amma took it, and where her foot touched the ground, the seed sank. Instantly, it sprouted. A small tree, black-barked, golden-leaved. The grove accepted it. That tree would carry Odu's future. The visitors stayed for a night, then left before dawn, walking backward to honor her. Amma watched without attachment. She belonged to Odu, but not completely. She belonged to every place that had forgotten how to speak, to the rain. And now, the rain listened again, not just to clouds, but to wounds, to memory, to silence that once held back whole generations. She had become the translator between grief and sky. One night, as thunder rumbled faintly, Amma stood atop the shrine hill and looked down at Odu. Fires flickered gently, children slept peacefully, and no secrets buzzed in the dark. She closed her eyes and smiled, not the quiet acknowledgement of earlier, but something deeper, freer. The sky cracked open, not with rain but stars. Dozens fell, not burning but glowing blue like ink spilled from the heavens. The villagers watched, frozen. When they ran to Amma, she was gone. In her place, only footprints made of light remained, burning faintly into the soil, spiraling out toward the four winds. No one wept. She hadn't died. She had melted back, into the sky that first kissed her with laughter. From that night, Odu changed its name. They renamed it Ama-Oko, the village that learned to listen. And every time it rained, the villagers stepped out into it with heads held high and hearts open, not to defy the storm, but to speak to it. And sometimes, if you laughed too loud, the rain might pause, just for a breath, as if listening for a girl whose skin once peeled in joy and never looked back. Years passed, and Ama-Oko flourished unlike any village in the region. Crops ripened ahead of the season. Rivers no longer flooded, but rose and fell with purpose. People married under rainbows. Children were named not after ancestors, but after moments. First drop, quiet thunder, laughing cloud. The rain never harmed again, because it had been taught how to love. But one day, a child named Nia asked her mother, "Who was Amma?" The mother paused. She had no face to remember, only a feeling. The elders tried to tell the tale, but Amma had become more than a girl. She was a season, a rhythm in the heartbeat of the land. To answer the child, they brought her to the well. And as she leaned over to look in, she saw not her reflection, but Amma, smiling from beneath the surface, not aging, not fading, only waiting. The rain began to fall gently, and without being told, Nia laughed. Her laugh was soft and free. The rain glowed on her skin. A single spiral mark appeared behind her ear, and the elders wept quietly. Amma had returned, not as a ghost, but as a promise passed into blood. The cycle had begun again. The story of Amma spread to lands far beyond Ama-Oko. Some called her a myth. Others searched for her shrine. Traders brought carvings of a girl with spiraled skin. Poets wrote verses about rain that listens and water that judges. But only those who walked through the grove at dawn, barefoot and silent, could hear her laughter. The grove never stopped blooming. Each season birthed a new flower, and each flower had a scent that reminded every soul of something they thought they'd forgotten. First love, childhood storms, or a truth they once buried deep. One day, a prince disguised as a beggar came to learn the secret of the rain. He stayed in the village for a week. At the end, he found nothing to steal, only humility. He left barefoot, the soles of his feet marked with spiral dust. The rain followed him home, but it only fell inside, his palace courtyard. Amma's truth did not travel by voice. It traveled by silence, by surrender, by the bravery of a girl who dared to laugh at the sky, and who taught the sky to laugh back. Ama-Oko now celebrates a yearly festival called the Day of First Rain. No songs are sung, no food is prepared. The village simply gathers in the grove and listens. If the rain comes, they smile. If it doesn't, they still wait. Because they know now that rain doesn't only fall from above, it rises from memory. That festival marks more than Amma's return. It marks the healing of a people who once buried their daughters for laughing too loud. In every hut, there is a bowl of rainwater that is never used for drinking, washing, or cooking. It is the listening bowl. On stormy nights, villagers sit beside it and speak, not to be answered, but to be heard. Sometimes the water shivers. Sometimes it glows, and on rare nights it chuckles, a quiet ripple like distant laughter. They say that's Amma, reminding them she never truly left. She only melted into the parts of the world that were brave enough to remember pain. And still laugh. And now you know the truth. It wasn't the rain that melted her skin. It was joy that peeled away what the world had forced her to wear. It was memory uncoiling from generations of silence. It was laughter louder than guilt, freer than shame. Amma wasn't cursed. She was chosen, not by gods but by grief. And she carried that grief so gently it blossomed. So if you ever find yourself caught in a sudden downpour, and you feel something warm in your chest or a whisper in your bones, do not run. Stand still. Laugh if you can. Cry if you must. But most of all, listen. Because somewhere in the droplets, she is waiting. Amma, the girl who taught the rain to remember, and who left behind a village that forgot how to fear the storm. We hope you enjoyed today's story. Give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. That's all for today. We see you in the next story. Till then, take care, folks.